Hey, what is going on, guys? In this video today, we're going to be discussing the most controversial 80 hours in Fortnite history. Unless you've been living under a rock or something, you're probably aware that it has been an absolutely crazy few days for Fortnite due to one singular weapon, the Infinity Blade Sword. The sword was first introduced to the game on December 11th in Update 7.01, and within the first day, it managed to firmly assert itself as one of the most impactful and controversial items in the history of Fortnite. Now, luckily, as we just recently learned, the story does ultimately have a happy ending, since due to enough negative community feedback regarding the sword, the Infinity Blade has been vaulted, hopefully once and for all. But I personally think it would be foolish to view this entire sword debacle as just a one-time thing that we can totally forget about just because it's now out of the game. I'm really happy that Epic eventually did the right thing here and admitted they were wrong, because it's something that a ton of game producers wouldn't ever do. So they definitely deserve to be applauded at least some degree for that. But the fact that it didn't happen right away, or more so the fact that it was even added into the game in the first place, really does call into question a lot of things about the future direction of Fortnite. And some of the updates we got directly from Epic employees during the 3-day period where the sword was in the game shows a pretty concerning disconnect between what Fortnite players want and what Epic actually have planned for their game. So without further ado, let's get right into breaking down the crazy debacle of the last few days. Alright, so just a super quick brush up in case you've already suppressed all the negative memories about the Infinity Blade from your brain. As I mentioned, the sword was added to Fortnite on December 11th as a part of Update v7.01. The sword had a primary fire which dealt 75 damage to players per slash, and an alternate fire which allowed you to leap ridiculously far, destroying any structure in your way. The player wielding the sword was also granted 4 additional abilities: a new max health of 400 comprised of 200 health and 200 shield, the ability to regenerate 1 HP per second while holding the sword, an instant boost of 50 HP for each elimination you got with the sword, and finally increased movement speed by 30%. Plain and simple, the mechanics of the sword combined with all of those additional abilities was just an absolute overkill for Fortnite. And it really didn't take long at all for the community to become aware of just how crazy overpowered this thing truly was. But that was just the beginning of the entire sword saga. Probably the lowest point came about 12 hours later during day 1 of the $1 million NA Winter Royale finals. Adding any kind of new item or weapon hours before a major competitive tournament is always going to be a super controversial decision. And when that new weapon happens to be the Infinity Blade Sword, trust me, bad things are bound to happen. Let me put it like this: combining an unbelievably powerful close-range weapon that also happens to be an insane structure destroyer with a lobby full of 100 pro players playing for a very large amount of money, it's pretty much the Fortnite equivalent of combining Diet Coke and Mentos. And that is exactly what we saw in day 1 of the NA finals. Now, I'm hoping that a lot of you guys were actually watching the tournament and saw it firsthand, because it really is hard to put into words just how unbelievably dominant the sword truly was. I'll actually play a relatively short clip in the background right now of Sam using the sword in one of the final circles of a match from the NA finals. And as you're about to see, he is going to absolutely destroy everybody in this close quarters scenario. This is something like a 30-second clip, and he ends up getting 6 kills in that 30-second span. I mean, that is absolutely insane. You see him using the alternate fire to break all the structures, and then using the primary fire to just go to town on unsuspecting players. And he actually finishes this clip with 12 kills, which is something you almost never see in a lobby of 100 pro-level players with money on the line. It was just absolutely ridiculous to watch, and this was something that ended up happening in pretty much every single game. It even got so ridiculous that at one point in the tournament, Liquid Chat picked up the sword and in the middle of a competitive event with thousands of dollars on the line, went on top of a mountain and spelled out his creator code with materials. The event as a whole was honestly an embarrassment for Fortnite, and I really do feel bad for most of the players involved. Imagine the opportunity of your life for potential exposure as a player and a chance at up to $70,000. You scrim for multiple hours a day, every day leading up to the tournament, and then mere hours before the tournament actually begins, a brand new game-breaking item is introduced into the game, and it changes absolutely everything about it. So the backlash from this event was absolutely massive, to say the least. And at this point, less than 24 hours after the sword was officially added into the game, I think it already cemented its spot on the theoretical Mount Rushmore of worst changes in Fortnite history. I think that Mount Rushmore would feature, in some order, the Season 5 pre-patch compact SMG, the Season 5 explosive damage buff, which made it so that you could take down entire buildings with like 1 or 2 C4s, the Season 5 nerf to structure health, which spawned the spray and pray meta, and then I think spot number 4 would be the Infinity Blade, with an honorable mention to the explosive penetration damage change from Season 6. And even though the NA Winter Royale Finals was probably the lowest point of the entire sword saga, it definitely didn't stop there. About 48 hours after the competitive event, Epic issued an official response to the controversy titled, "Let's Talk About the Infinity Blade." The post was a little on the long side, so I'll just pick out the important information from it. The first part about mythic items is probably the most important of the whole post. It says, "The presence of mythic items in gameplay is to provide an interaction a step above the legendary item functionality, and it's something you'll continue to see. To us, that means changing the way the game is played for those who interact with that item. The addition of items in this tier provide new and flavorful ways to interact with the map, and generally shake up normal play across default modes." So they basically came out and said that mythic items like the sword are something we will continue to see across default game modes, which means solos, duos, and squads. And that statement was, and still somewhat is, really concerning. We'll get into a little more detail about that in a second. And the final part of this post was Epic's attempt at balancing the Infinity Blade. They said, "The change we're currently planning for the Infinity Blade in our V7.10 update is to remove the ability to build and harvest when wielding the blade." Now, I honestly think that change would have actually been a somewhat solid nerf, but because it was ultimately vaulted, we'll never really find out. So even though that was an attempt by Epic to speak directly to the community to kind of give their side of the story when it comes to the Infinity Blade, it honestly only made people more mad. It was downvoted thousands of times on Reddit, and the general consensus from the community at that point was that Epic was totally out of touch with their player base. But on Friday, December 14th, approximately 80 hours after release, the Infinity Blade was finally laid to rest. Fortnite announced this on Twitter with the following statement. "Heya folks," yes, they actually did start that statement off with the word heya, I did not misspeak there. "We messed up and rolled out the Infinity Blade overpowered / without good counters, especially in the endgame. The Infinity Blade has been vaulted and we are re-evaluating our approach to mythic items. Thanks for calling us out on this." So I think as a whole that counts as a kind of happy ending to the entire story. And it is really important to note that they specifically said that they plan on re-evaluating their approach to future mythic items. Now, I think a lot of people are wrongly interpreting that to mean there won't be any more mythic items, but in my opinion that's kind of wishful thinking. I think it just means that Epic is going to take a closer look at the mythic items they have planned for the future to try to ultimately avoid another Infinity Blade disaster. So ultimately, it's a good thing that Epic decided to cut their losses in the end and admit that they were wrong here. I've played a bunch of different video games for about 10 plus years now, and let me tell you, a ton of companies, shout out to 2K Sports, would have just tuned out the hate and kept the sword in, even if it meant a slow demise for their game in the end. But on the flip side, Epic should also receive a ton of criticism for the fact that the sword even got into the live game in the first place. If you make a mess and then clean it up, sure, you did the right thing by correcting your mistake, and that is good, but you were the one who made the mess in the first place. And I think it is still a concern that every 2 months or so, we get some kind of game-breaking change in Fortnite. And it's a real shame that the Infinity Blade overshadowed the super exciting and encouraging beginning of Season 7. So that concludes the story of the 80 hours and the single item that almost ruined the most popular video game in the world. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys also enjoyed my death to the Infinity Blade when I had 21 kills in this gameplay. If you watched the entire video, be sure to let me know with a comment down the comment section below. I want to hear your full, unfiltered opinion on the Infinity Blade and the 80 hours it's been in Fortnite. Did you like it, hate it, really hate it, 5,000% hate it? Let me know. Be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications, do whatever the heck you want, and I will catch you guys next time.